RFID, Hear and Know, a podcast brought to you by Aimglobal, the ultimate resource for automatic identification and mobility. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is John C. Havens, host of the Aimglobal podcast interview show called Hear and Know. And today we're extremely excited to have on the show Mr. Jeff Ireland. Jeff is the Director of Global Visible Commerce for Unisys. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
We hear a lot about supply chain visibility in reference to RFID. Wondering if that visibility means anything in the supply chain beyond just knowing what you have and where it is?
Well, visibility means several things to us. Clearly, it means where are things located. That is kind of a universal concept. But also, visibility can mean other things, and often does. It often means specificity. Is it specifically the item I'm looking for? Some unique code, as it were, can provide that. State, for example, is another thing that visibility could be all about, which is are my products at the proper temperature, or in the particular handling conditions, have they been properly handled under acceleration, things of that nature, drop, for example. Compliance is another dimension, a fourth dimension to visibility. Are consistent with regulatory and trade documentation requirements? Integrity of the product is a fifth category we tend to think about in terms of it hasn't been breached or damaged or anything of that nature. And authenticity is probably the sixth dimension of this. That's a dimension where is the product exactly the product it's supposed to be? Is it counterfeit or it's been diverted? I need to know whether it's authentic in its nature. So we tend to think about visibility in those six sort of dimensions.
What are the components that go into securing a supply chain?
Well, there's several components. Clearly, visibility is one of those things. The very things that I've talked about before about the location. Is my product or my item in the proper location? Is it in the proper state, that is, hasn't been broken into or anything of that nature? Those are obvious things. Also, to secure a supply chain, you have to think about who are the people around my supply chain? Who are the people who are handling my goods, providing me services? Have they been vetted out? Do I have a biometric, as it were, for example, that in fact indicates that those people are in fact who they say they are? Another important thing around supply chains and security is simple inspections. If I'm going to be putting my goods in a cargo container, for example, I want to make sure that cargo container doesn't have any false bottoms, false backs, which could be used to smuggle goods and things of that nature into a country. So the notion of proper inspections, the proper vetting of people, and having the visibility around that supply chain, all are important components to a secure supply chain.
Why is it important to integrate these different components?
Well, each of these components are important from a security standpoint. Any one of them could, in fact, give some indication of a security problem. But to have a total visibility, as it were, over the security of my supply chain, I need to look at each one of them. I need to integrate them together so that I have a complete look at my supply chain. So at a particular node, I need to know not only is the location proper, but is anyone broken into that cargo container, for example, or is there anyone around that a particular product or cargo container such that they are not the right people that should be around that particular item. So I need to make sure the access control to that item is properly maintained. Any one of those things could indicate a problem. They need to be viewed in an integrated fashion to assure that, in fact, you have a secure supply chain. You can integrate them together by bringing them together into a software visibility tool that essentially oversees the supply chain movement, as it were, and has the total visibility of that supply chain.
What advantage does RFID offer over, say, existing security seals?
Well, a few things. One is the nature of RFID allows you to stand back away from the very thing that you're securing and measure its status. So in typical situations now, when you're securing a supply chain, someone needs to go up to the item, actually take a look at it, test it. Has it been opened in any sense? Has it been tampered with in any way? That takes a human intervention. That takes proximity, very close proximity that needs to do that. With RFID, you can stand back and not necessarily have that physical contact and in fact could do it at a gateway, for example, as an item moves through the gate at a relatively rapid rate. That's one benefit. The other benefit is you have the opportunity to wrap other things into that RFID security process, such as different types of sensing sort of devices. Has light entered my item, my container, for example? If light has entered it, maybe someone's cut into it, for example. You can also do other things with that particular technology, measure its environmental status, hot, cold, things of that nature, and assure that it hasn't been tampered with or spoiled or any of those sort of things during that movement in the supply chain. So it has several additional advantages above and beyond the typical physical seals that you see today.
Are there currently initiatives that you know of to test or implement these security technologies? And love to hear your thoughts about either U.S. initiatives or ones that are happening abroad.
There has been and there continues to be several initiatives around this particular area within the maritime cargo business as well as air cargo. There have been and there are pilots underway right now. One of the pilots, some of the pilots have been run by the U.S. government, particularly the Department of Homeland Security for cargo. There have been pilots by TSA for air cargo. There is a pilot now being explored by Aimglobal to move cargo out of Hong Kong into the United States. There are initiatives in South Africa and in China looking at securing supply chains to address some of the security needs of those countries. And by the way, some of these countries are not only motivated by security issues. South Africa, for example, has a lot of concerns about tax collections. There is a fair amount of the cargo that moves through the country that isn't properly taxed, and they want greater visibility around the cargo movement so that they're gathering those particular funds. And obviously, an additional benefit is reduction of theft and reduction of terrorist exposure, as it were. So there's several initiatives around, and each of them are somewhat similar in that they're tending to use electronic seals with an RFID or something of that nature. They're also looking at it from a dual-use standpoint. That is, not only having it being used by the government officials from the security standpoint, but also use it from the standpoint of providing visibility into the supply chains in which the shippers and the carriers are the great beneficiaries of that because they can improve the efficiency of their supply chains.
Are there additional benefits to a secure trade lane beyond homeland security, things like fast tracking through customs or that type of thing?
There definitely is those things emerging. Governments are looking at securing supply chains with technologies like I've explained and be able to provide fast tracks as a motivator as well as a benefit that can be obtained out of those particular technologies. And that will be potentially emerging at ports and alike, both in the U.S. and elsewhere. Additional benefits that can be seen is that the very visibility that these technologies can provide can be used directly by the shippers themselves, irrespective of the security benefits. The fact that you know where your cargo is, you know where the status of it is, you got higher grain of visibility than you can typically get today. You can identify and uncover problems in supply chains that indicate where your cargo might be dwelling too long. You can reduce those dwell times and essentially remove that inventory that's bottled up in your supply chain and give benefits directly to the shipper. These are some of the things that have very tangible benefits, and certainly companies are out there now looking at those very things.
Any additional thoughts you think our readers or listeners should consider with regards to either supply chain visibility or anything else?
Well, I think from a supply chain visibility standpoint, I think some of the key things to remember are some of the points I made earlier. That it is not only location that we're talking about here, but you have the opportunity to have the status of your products from the standpoint of the conditions that it's in, its compliance with regulatory processes, the authenticity, the integrity of those items are all possible things to extract from your supply chain once you essentially enable it with techniques like RFID. When considering such a technology as this, it's important to try to exploit it in all the different dimensions that it has. That way you're extracting as much value out of it, and the business case becomes that much easier to move forward with that sort of technology.
Great summation. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, we've been interviewing Mr. Jeff Ireland. Jeff, again, is the Director of Global Visible Commerce for Unisys. You can find out more about Unisys by going online to www.u.com, And Jeff, really, thanks again so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, for me, this is John C. Havens for Aimglobal's RFID Connections podcast interview show called Hear and Know, saying that we will hear you next time.
For further information on any